involved with court probate. So with a trust,
That's if I do what?
a revocable trust.
Okay.
Revocable means that even though you have a trust, it still belongs to you. Revocable means you can tear it up, you can revoke it, say, I don't want this anymore tomorrow, and whatever's in the trust goes back into your pocket. So I always tell my clients this. If you do a revocable trust, you are not giving anything away. You are not giving up any control. You're still in charge of your own money, and it is for you. The reason to do a trust, if you wanted to do one, was to make the process of what happens next easier. If you're not able to make your own decisions, or when you die, you can put in place, as we call it, a trustee or a successor trustee, someone who can take over from you or even help you out right now. And that trustee will have all the legal authority to manage money and to transition money and property. So like if you passed away, let's say, we're going to get a pick on these two because they're here. You name them as your trustees. You say, if I'm gone, then David and Carol are in charge. And then when you pass away, they will be able to collect all the accounts, sell the property, pay the taxes, pay your bills, and disperse
They
them.
make the decisions.
Yes, you could make it so that they could make the decision, or whoever you want. It could be anybody. Or you could hire someone to do it. I always say I don't do that, but I can recommend someone if you wanted to.
Yeah.
But basically, what a trustee's job is, it's like the executor. They settle the estate. The difference is, first of all, they can be in charge even if you're alive, but you don't have the ability or you just don't want to handle it. So some of my clients feel like, gosh, it's too much for me. I need a second set of eyes and a second set of hands. Let's have a trustee, like one of my family members, on board. Being in a trust doesn't make somebody else own your money. And I always want to be clear about that.
It doesn't mean they'll inherit it.
It
Is that
doesn't
what
mean
you-
they'll inherit it. It certainly
Yeah.
doesn't mean they own it today.
Yeah.
It means that they're a fiduciary. They're a helper. They're legally responsible for using the money to take care of you and your needs. And when you die, they're legally responsible for giving it to whoever you said was supposed to get it. So that's the purpose of a revocable trust,
Yeah.
to collect assets into one pot. And it can be any institution. So if you like Craig Strauss, you could be with him and he could be your financial advisor. It could be 3 financial, whatever you want. You don't
Yeah.
have to, but it'd be your money. Your name would still be on it. You would still be able to write checks. I know this worries a lot of people. Your life doesn't change.
Yeah.
What the purpose of a trust is, it's to avoid court involvement and simplify things a little bit so that another family member or friend or someone you trust is able to really support you. That's why people do this. What a revocable trust doesn't do, it doesn't change your tax situation because you're still in charge.
Yeah.
Your tax situation stays just like it is. It doesn't change your legal rights to money. Based on the figures you've given me, I would not be, if I were you, concerned about paying for care, for example. Like if you needed an aide to come in or you needed something like that, I wouldn't worry about financing that. I think that you've got a lot of ways to do that.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure that there's somebody in your life who can help you make sure that everything's in one place and that the bills are getting paid. Like, I think that's...
Sounds like a full-time job.
There are people who do it professionally.
Yeah.
I have a client, about 6 years older than you, she just turned 100, she just hired a professional trustee. She's able to make her own decisions, but she just doesn't want to anymore. So
Yeah,
she said,
I know.
so we brought in a bank, and the woman from the bank comes down and visits with her and helps her write all the checks.
Yeah.
It's fine. So
I get more confused all the time.
it's The purpose of a revocable plan, a revocable trust place plan.
A revocable,
Revocable means revoke means
you
rip it
can
up.
change it.
You can change it, you can rip
Yeah.
it up, it's yours.
Yeah,
Is to make your life a little bit easier. And
yeah,
to make your family's life easier if something happened to you. What I can tell you is right now, if something happened to you tomorrow, your sister Carol would have quite a job. I mean, she could be done. What, it's not, but she'd have to figure out what's going on basically with Howard's family, because his will, your will leaves things to Howard's family. She would need to figure out what's going on there. She'd need to figure out where all the accounts are without having you to ask.
yeah,
She would need to go and fill out paperwork with each and every one of those accounts. And she'd need to do the court work. She'd need to empty out, if she's going to sell your homes here in Wakefield and Wells, she'd need to empty them and get them ready for sale. It's a lot of work.
yeah,
So that would be what would be involved in administering an estate. If you lost capacity, which means you're living, but you couldn't make your own decisions, she would need to make all your medical decisions and handle all your finances.
yeah. Well,
So-
somebody needs to do that, right? I mean,
Yes, you need
you
to
need
get
to have
somebody.
someone that will do that.
You need to have somebody.
Yeah,
So yes, that's 100%. Because otherwise, here's what happens if you don't. If you don't name anybody and you lose capacity, so your family has to go to court. So your brother and sister have to go to court. Your two brothers actually and your sister have to go to court and figure out who's going to make decisions for you.
yeah,
And they all have equal rights to do it.
yeah.
And that probably is not ideal for me.
Probably the best thing, you probably should make it for the youngest person so it won't have to keep changing, right?
It's good to
If
have
you trust them.
if you trust them. So
Yeah.
the downside with these documents, all of them, is we said there's no court oversight. No one's looking over the shoulder of the power of attorney. No one's looking over the shoulder of the trustee, except for your family. And if they're doing something wrong, there's not a court or judge or somebody who's going to step in and notice it. So you have to trust them, like you said. You're picking somebody you trust absolutely, with a lot of authority over your finances. It doesn't mean you don't have authority. You still do. But if you get sick, if you God forbid you have a stroke or a
Yeah,
heart attack or something, you're in the hospital, you're trusting that this person is going to be looking after your best interests.
yeah.
Does that make sense?
That will do what?
Look after you and your best interest. And not cause any problems. So it's a lot of work. It really, really is. So that's what these documents are for. So my advice, actually we've talked about it a lot. What questions do you have?
What'd you say?
What questions do you have? We talked about a lot already.
And what are you asking me now?
Do you have questions?
Oh, do I have questions? I wish I had some answers. Let's see. So what you recommend that I do now would be to name a beneficiary, right?
So you should do that for any IRAs or investments you have coming in.
Yeah,
But you should also revisit all these documents. And I would recommend you put your property and probably your bank accounts into trust,
in a trust,
in a revocable trust that's still yours.
a revocable
A
trust.
revocable trust.
Yeah. I know I definitely don't want an irrevocable trust. But when you have an irrevocable trust and that person dies, what happens?
So, okay, what's an irrevocable trust? An irrevocable trust is a gift. People do irrevocable trust if they have some money or property that they want to give to somebody else, but with strings. So let's say you wanted to give David here your house in Wells, but you don't want him to be able to run off and sell it and, do something with it that you didn't want.
Yeah,
So you could, instead of giving it to him and he can now walk off and do whatever he wants, if you give it to him in a trust, You can say, all right, but Carol is going to be the trustee. She's going to be responsible for making sure that Dave doesn't run off and do something and sell the house out from under the family. And like that's really, so you're saying it's not my house anymore. I'm giving it away. But I'm going to set the terms, and the terms I set are going to stick with the property for some period of time, at least as long as I'm alive. So people will do an irrevocable trust, and here's why. Usually they're worried about nursing home costs.
They what?
Nursing homes. They're worried about, what if I
Yeah.
go to a nursing home? How am I going to pay?
Yeah,
And they think, gosh, the state's going to be holding their hands out for my house, which is sort of true. So if the state's holding out their hands for my house, I want to make sure my family gets my house instead. I put it in this trust, and I say, okay, they're going to get the house, but not right now.
yeah,
I'm going to set the terms, I'm going to keep some strings, and that house is going to stick with me while I'm alive.
yeah,
But can't change my mind and say, well, this one didn't show up for Thanksgiving dinner, so they're out. So you can't do that with the irrevocable trust. So that's why people do it. For you, just based on these numbers, I'm not sure that I would worry that much about nursing home costs. The reason why
because I'm so old, I wouldn't be a,
because you need to spend down to $2,000 or less in money.
say that again?
In order for the state to help you pay, it's not just your real estate. They want you to go through your money until you have less than $2,000 in countable assets.
Yeah,
Now, if you had an illness and your doctor said, gosh, Jerry, you could be here for 15 years with this, whatever you've got.
yeah,
And I would say, gosh, you could run through all that money in 15 years. Let's do some planning. That might be worthwhile. For you, because of your age, I know. I mean, there's a 5-year look back period. You have a lot of cash. I'm not sure that's a great investment for you, an irrevocable trust. We could talk about it more, but I would not, if I were you, I guess I would not spend a lot of mental energy worrying about how nursing homes would get paid for, because you have a source to pay for them.
yeah.
The other thing is,
And
yeah,
when they say you protect it from the nursing home, that's as long as you're alive, and then the nursing home can step in and want their money, right?
no, that the
No?
whole point is protecting it so that they can't get it ever. So let's say let's say you have your house in Wells, and you say I want this to be a family house. It's really important to me. No matter what happens to me, if I'm in the nursing home for 15 years, I don't want there to be any way for the state to come in and get this property.
Yeah,
And then what you're doing is you're saying, that's not mine anymore. I'm putting this in this irrevocable trust, not going to be able to take it back, but I can set the terms on how it's going to be managed and who can decide what to do with it. And when I die, here's the people it's going to.
when I die, what?
You decide who it goes to when you die. Those are the terms. What happens is after a 5-year look-back period, the state will no longer treat that house as yours. So if you spend your other money and you have $2,000 or less of countable assets, then you are protected. It's just not something that I think, well, we could talk about it more, but if I were you, I would probably stick with a revocable trust for right now.
Revocable?
Revocable.
Irrevocable?
No, revocable.
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 Yeah.
Because I think that unless there's something you haven't shared, I think you could finance care for 5 years. Like you could pay for your own care for 5 years if you needed it.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about the look back period? So in a revocable trust is the 5-year look back. Well, what's the 5-year look back? Like people keep saying that to me. Oh, there's a 5-year look. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, because it's really confusing, and most of the people who are talking about it don't quite get it either. It is a really confusing idea. So basically, here's the problem, and I know Jerry knows this. The problem is that Medicare, which everyone gets at age 65, doesn't pay for long-term care.
Okay.
So if,
No.
yeah, exactly. If you have a heart attack and you need to go to the hospital, Medicare will pay for the hospital and the doctors and the nurses and the medication and all that stuff. But let's say after your heart attack, you are no longer able to shower by yourself because you're so weak from that. You are no longer able to get out of bed, can't feed yourself. You need someone to remind you to give you your medication. We call those activities of daily living. You
Mhm.
can't do them anymore. Medicare does not pay for an aide to come in and help you with that.
Okay.
That's what long-term care is.
So Medicare only pays for the hospital.
They
Once
pay
you
the
go-
doctors.
Once you leave the hospital,
They pay for your outpatient medical team,
yeah,
like your
okay.
doctor that you go
But
visit.
they don't pay for a place for you to live.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. They don't pay for, like, if you need to go to an assisted living or a nursing home for longer than 100 days. Medicare does not pay for that. Period.
Yeah,
That's called long-term care. So if you can't live alone, because what you really need is someone to physically help you out with
Yeah.
all your basic activities. What happens then? If Medicare doesn't pay for it, your health insurance doesn't pay for it either. So
No.
Blue Cross, no, if you have a policy through your job and you get into an accident and you're disabled because of it, does not pay for aids, any of that for someone. So those are all private pay. They're very expensive.
yeah.
So an aide can be $45 an hour to come into your home, especially if you need 24/7 care. It usually ranges from like 20 something to like 40 something dollars an hour. 24/7 care at home. If you have an aide from an agency coming in and just taking care of you in your own home, that can cost $19,000 or $20,000 a month. Because why? Because they're 24/7.
Because you,
It's
they're
just the
there,
people.
yeah, 24 hours a day.
Yeah. So you're not paying for 8 hours